You're listening to episode 104 of Liz's Healthy Table.
Looking for a healthy new way to feed your family without the hassle and hype? Welcome to Liz's Healthy Table, where your host, registered dietitian nutritionist Liz Weiss, serves up fresh and flavorful recipes with a tasty side of science, good nutrition, and fun. Are you and your family ready for some wholesome food that tastes great too? Don't change that dial. Your food adventure starts here.
Welcome to the podcast. On this week's show, everything you ever wanted to know about olive oil and then some. My guest is David Garcia-Aguirre. He is Vice President of Operations and Master Miller at Corto Olive Oil Company in California. He is an olive oil guru committed to the advancement of high-quality olive oil production, research, and education. And today he'll be educating all of us about olive oil, what to look for at the market to make sure you're buying the freshest oil, how to store it at home to keep it fresh, and why heat, light, and air are the three biggest enemies of your bottle, how to use extra virgin olive oil to elevate your everyday cooking, the latest innovations in packaging. Wait till you hear about their bag in a box. It's so cool. And why olive oil is not just delicious, it's nutritious. David will be busting myths about olive oil and taking us behind the scenes at Corto for a tour of their gorgeous olive oil groves, or rather their gorgeous olive groves, and their harvest, their milling, and the storing and packaging of their olive oil. We're also giving away one 3-liter flavor lock box of Corto's truly 100% extra virgin olive oil. Now, this used to be sold exclusively to top restaurant chefs. This was done for years, right? But now it's available to consumers through the Corto website and then through online retailers like Amazon. So for my US listeners, you can enter for a chance to win a 3-liter flavor lock box just by entering the giveaway over on the show notes from today's show at lizshealthytable.com/podcast. And P.S., this is a $70 value. And if you're watching this interview versus listening, I'm going to show you what some of these products look like in just a bit. A few friendly reminders. If you love the show, tell a friend about it or post a review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow me on lizshealthytable.com and be sure to check out the show notes from today's show for all of the resources that we talk about. And of course, to enter the giveaway. And follow me on Instagram. My handle is @LizWeiss. And now I am excited to welcome David to the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you, Liz. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and thank you and all your listeners. And hopefully we can live up to the what I think is one of the most misunderstood ingredients. Hopefully we can demystify that a bit and spread some of the excitement around it.
Well, I'm excited about it. And, you know, I didn't tell you this, David, but if you're on Peloton, anybody that's on Peloton, I was using it a lot this winter. Do you have a Peloton?
I do not.
Okay. So we bought a Peloton, with COVID, we were at home. And so we had the Peloton, and now I just kind of use it for yoga. But I share this because my handle on Peloton is olive oil 60. Now, the reason for the name olive oil is twofold. Number one, I cook with it all the time and I love it. And number two, I have sort of that skinny body like olive oil, Popeye's girlfriend, even though I wish I could, add some muscle, but it's just my body type. It's who I am. So olive oil 60, and 60 is because I had a big birthday in 2020, but we don't need to go there.
Well, congratulations.
Well, thank you so much. So, David, why don't we just start the show? Just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, where you live, family, and just kind of a brief description of what you do for Corto.
Sure. So, I was born and raised here in California, in the mountains, actually, up in the Sierras. Recently, with the job at Corto, we've moved to the Central Valley, just north of the mill, which is in Lodi, California, which is just south of Sacramento. So basically in the middle of California in the Central Valley. I studied philosophy. I fell into olive oil purely by accident. So I don't have one of those romantic stories where I grew up on an olive farm. Just sometimes life takes you in different directions. And here I am. I was brought on Corto. I started at Corto in 2013. And it's been, we'll get into a little more of why this is so exciting and why I really compare it to like the third wave in coffee. There's this new wave of high quality production in olive oil that's coming. The Corto is a company that's just committed to the right things, in my opinion. And I've learned the trade here at Corto. So
great. And I was on their website and they have a lot of cool videos, and I'll encourage everybody to watch those so you can see how the olives are grown and harvested. And there's a video, I think, where I see you going through and sort of tasting the olive oil. I could see, if people are watching the interview, you could see behind you these giant, what do you call them? I guess is where you're storing your olive oil, and I could see you tasting it out of those.
Yeah, we call them casks.
A cask. Oh, so like with wine, you would put wine in
Yep.
a cask. It's the same thing with the olive oil.
Yep.
And these are big metal casks.
Protect the olive oil.
Yeah, I hope people watch this, watch our interview, because it's kind of cool. So let's get a little bit into olive oil. So I attended a tasting, and I was sort of like, I've done a million Zoom cooking classes through COVID and webinars and conferences. And I was like, oh gosh, here we go again, another Zoom something. It was the best hour ever. I learned so much about olive oil, and I thought, okay, I have to do a podcast on it, because we were tasting your olive oil. We were tasting rancid olive oils, and wow, what a huge difference. So I met you, during this tasting. I met you virtually, and you said something that really stuck with me. You said it to the group. You said, olive oil is the ingredient that farm to table forgot. That really stuck with me, because when you think farm to table, it's like, oh, the local eggs and the beautiful local tomatoes and the honey. But you're saying that olive oil, farm to table forgot about it. Kind of elaborate on that for us.
Sure. I mean, it's true. Olive oil is an ingredient that farm to table forgot. I think, what farm to table did is it closed the gap between the farmer and the consumer, right? It put a face behind every egg or chicken or produce. There was a farmer that grew it. There was the heirloom variety. They'll tell you, if you go to a restaurant nowadays and you look at the menu, they'll tell you everything there is to know about their ingredients, except one, usually. And that's olive oil. And I think that's because olive oil, even in the best institutions, culinary institutions in the United States, is still kind of seen like a commodity. And it's really not. At its best, it's not. And that's what this is all about.
So I know you said too that olive oil is has been perceived as this commodity. It's just been lumped together, with other edible oils. And your olives are different. Your olive oil is different from everything I learned. You told us that you pick them when they're fresh, they're green with a hint of violet. You said that olive oil is essentially fresh pressed juice from the olives. And that to me, started to change it in my mind. I'm visualizing these beautiful olives being picked at ripeness, the peak of ripeness, and the juice coming out. But that's what you guys do. But that's not really how it happens around the world these days. So tell us about that.
Well, I think it helps to start where you started, which is distinguishing what olive oil is from all of the other oils that are out there, because that's what makes it so special. When you talk about the edible oil category, right? We talk about canola oil, vegetable oil, soybean oils, all these different oils. From the very beginning, their destination in life by design is to become odorless, colorless, flavorless fats, right? They go through a refining, bleaching, and deodorization process, which strips everything out of the oil. Olive oil at its best should be the exact opposite of that, right? Olive oil is, like you said, it's fresh pressed juice. So it's actually a celebration of the fruit itself. It celebrates the flavors. It contains all of the natural, the micronutrients, polyphenols, all of the flavor compounds, all of that are in the final product because it isn't refined, bleached, and deodorized. So it really, at its best, it should be a celebration of the fruit it comes from.
That's amazing when you describe it that way. So talk a little bit then about Corto, what you do versus what's happening elsewhere. We buy our olive oil, we think, oh, I'm going to get extra virgin. I'm kind of elevating things a little bit by going to the extra virgin. But from what I learned, it's not like all these oils are created equal, even when you do buy an extra virgin olive oil. So what in reality is happening out there in the world of olive oil?
Okay, well, let's go back to our analogy of fresh fruit, because I think it's the best way to conceive of what olive oil can be. Let's picture an orange tree in our backyard. Let's say we walk out to that orange tree and that orange is perfectly ripe, right? You've just nailed it. It's the exact right time of year. And you pick that orange off the tree and you juice it. What do you expect that orange juice to taste like?
Amazing. It's going to taste like the orange. It's going to smell great. It's going to be like, wow. It's going to wow your taste buds, right?
Right. Yeah. It's this awesome experience. And it also has all of the healthy components from the orange that are in the juice itself. Now, let's imagine for a minute that on our way to that orange tree, we got distracted, right? Something happened. The dog ran through the screen door, something happened. So we got pulled somewhere else and we forget about the orange for 1, 2, 3, 4 months. That orange is still on the tree, right? That orange continues to ripen and it gets to a point where it starts to become overripe. It starts to rot. It starts to ferment. Now we can still go out there and we can still pick that orange and juice it. But what do you expect that orange juice to taste like?
That's going to be nasty stuff because it's going to be, when you said fermented, I'm almost thinking it's like alcohol-y flavored at that point, right? It's starting to ferment. It's icky.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And unfortunately for us, especially in the United States, most of the olive oil that's available in supermarkets is from fruit, olives that are way overripe. So they actually do have a lot of those alcohol-y flavors. And, the reality is probably 70% of the oils on the shelf are rancid, and mostly because they're from fruit like that, overripe fruit.
But why? Why are people picking, whether we're talking US or anywhere around the world, why are they picking the fruit when it's not ripe, when it's past its prime, way past its prime?
Well, that window to collect high quality fruit for a high quality oil is very narrow. And during that window, the fruit is very hard to get off the tree. And up until about 15 to 20 years ago, the technology hadn't existed to be able to harvest at that time of year. So everything was hand harvested. And as you can imagine, yes, there are beautiful oils produced around the world during that window. They all come from hand harvested fruit, but there's not very much of it because it would take a lot of people to get that oil off the tree to meet the demand. So when this new technology came out about 20 years ago now, it truly is a game changer. It's the first time that we're able to harvest in the fall during that perfect window at any kind of scale to make meaningful volumes of high quality olive oil.
So you're telling me now that at Corto, you have a new technology that allows you to harvest when that fruit is perfectly ripe versus waiting when it's like the fruit's past its prime and it's easier to get off the tree, for example, because I know that overripe orange, you're going to shake that tree, it's going to come right down versus having to pick it off. So tell us about this technology, what's going on at Corto. And is this something that's happening elsewhere, or should we just be buying Corto? And I'm looking at my bag in a box Corto olive oil. I'm going to hold this up so people can actually see what this looks like if they're watching, but we'll put this in the show notes so people can see what this bag in a box looks like. Yeah. So tell us about this technology for harvesting.
Sure. So first and foremost, we didn't invent it. We're early adopters of it. And we'll be seeing more and more of it because the writing's on the wall. It's really the only way to make high quality oil at any kind of meaningful scale.
So what is it? What is this technology?
What it is we call it vineyard style planting. Others call it super high density. And what it is, it's olive trees that are planted very close together. We're talking 3 to 5 feet in long hedgerows, right? A lot like grapes are planted. So grapes are grown on trellises. They're grown, basically in hedgerows. And what it does is it allows an over-the-row harvester. So a harvester that literally drives over the top of the hedgerow, and it has like little picking fingers inside to strip the fruit off the tree in the fall. So it's essentially allowed us to mechanize the harvest in the fall.
So this technology allows you to more easily get those olives off those trees. what's historically happening or what's historically, happened in terms of harvesting?
Yeah. So historically, the only technology that's been available has been trunk shakers like they use in nuts. So it's literally a clamp that clamps onto the tree and it shakes the heck out of it. And all of the olives would drop. The problem is, as I said earlier, if you try and shake the tree in the fall, they're really hard to get off. So you don't get many olives off. So unfortunately, you have to wait until the fruit's just about to fall off the tree to use a trunk shaker. By that point, you're way beyond that window to make really high quality oil. So most of the oil we end up with is very poor quality from overripe fruit.
So when you go to the grocery store and you buy that olive oil, no names mentioned, no brands mentioned, because you guys aren't sold in the supermarket. So I'm going to go into the supermarket and I'm going to see some beautiful Italian olive oil or Spanish olive oil, Greek olive oil, and I'm going to buy it because it says extra virgin. And I think this is awesome stuff. What can you tell me about what I'm buying at the supermarket then?
Well, I mean, I don't like to make blanket statements about all oils. There are good and bad oils produced everywhere. I mean, some of the best oils I've ever had have been Spanish, Greek, Australian, from Chile, from California. So there are great oils produced everywhere. I think, there are two problems here. Number one, the first problem is the fresh fruit, right? If you don't have fresh fruit, then you can't make a high quality oil. But the second problem, and this is probably the biggest problem, is that even if you do make a high quality oil, it is really difficult to keep it fresh all the way to the consumer. So even if the oil started off as a high quality oil, by the time it gets to the shelf, by the time the consumer opens the bottle, most often that oil is rancid already.
Wow. How do you know it's rancid? How does the consumer know that?
Well, one of my take home messages is going to be, unfortunately right now, the only way to really know, unless you have a lab at your house, is tasting oil. Once you taste fresh oil, and you understand that fresh oil should taste like fresh things from the garden, herbs, fruits, things like that, then it becomes very clear what is fresh and what isn't fresh.
So if I tasted Corto, what would it taste like compared to, say, an oil that's rancid?
So it would, our oil, like let's say we try Truly. Truly has green apple in it. It's very herbaceous. It's fruity. It just reminds you of fresh cut grass, things that are very fresh. If you taste an oil that's rancid, or like I said, from overripe fruit, it's going to taste like nail polish, solvent, Play-Doh, crayons, things that they don't remind you of the garden. I think it's the best way to think about it. If it reminds you of fresh things from the garden, it's probably a fresh oil.
Wow. So the fruit from the juice from the fruit. And I know when I had a friend come over and I took some of the oil and I put it in a little cup and I said to my friend, shake this and smell it. And then I had her take a little taste and she was blown away by it because it smells beautiful, just to start, right? I think it's important that we smell it even before we taste it.
Absolutely. We actually do. We have a virtual tasting that we developed during COVID so we could continue to reach out to our customers. And in it, we include a jelly bean. And the whole exercise is that you plug your nose, you put the jelly bean in your mouth, and you chew the jelly bean. While you're doing that, you have to try and figure out what kind of jelly bean it is. And then halfway through, you release your nose, and suddenly it's like, bam, okay, I know what kind of jelly bean this is now. And the reason for that is most of what we call flavor is actually aroma. It's not taste. So smelling the olive oil is it's your best tool for understanding what quality of olive oil you have.
That is so cool. So before we give listeners some really great tips on olive oil, how to cook with it, why is it nutritious, all that good stuff, just paint a picture for us of what it looks like where you work. Now, what it looks like when you're in the field, when things are being harvested. You sort of touched on that. When the olives are being pressed. And I think I hear a forklift behind you from time to time. So there's some action going on at your work site today. So just paint that picture. Take us behind the scenes.
Sure. So I'll say it again. Olives are a fresh pressed juice, right? So once we harvest the fruit, then we have to rush it to the mill in hours to extract that juice. If we don't, then we'll run into the same problems everyone else does, which is you start getting fermented fruit. So visually, our mill is right in the middle of a bunch of olive groves, right? And that's so that we can rush the fruit to the mill quickly. The mill itself, let's see, what do I want to tell you about milling? So the process is actually pretty simple. The fruit comes in, we clean it up, and then we crush the fruit into kind of a paste. And then we slowly mix it for about 20 minutes. That allows all the flavors and polyphenols and all the fun stuff in the oil to move into the oil. And then we use a centrifuge to separate it from the rest of the olive. All of this is done super cold to protect all of the nutritional value and all of the flavors and aromas of the fruit. Then instantly, once the oil is out of the olive, it goes straight into stainless steel casks in a climate-controlled cellar under nitrogen to keep the oxygen away, to basically protect everything that we work so hard to get during harvest.
How many olives does it take to create this 3-liter bag in a box that I have in my kitchen that is like lifting weights every time I lift it up?
I would have to do a lot of math to come up with that on the fly. I don't know if I'll be able to. If I had to guess, give me a second. I'm going to do some quick head math and we'll see where I get.
You think about it, and anybody listening, you think about it too. How many olives does it take? You mentioned jelly beans, and I was thinking jelly beans in a jar, olives.
Well, I'll tell you what, let me put it this way. If you look at an olive, right, one olive, only about 15 to 20% of that is oil.
So a lot of olives.
A lot of olives.
If you can't think of it, Debbie, during our interview, then you need to email that to me, and I will include it in the show notes because
I'm not known for my on-the-fly math. I'll just leave it at that.
I can't believe nobody's asked you this before. That is absurd. That is absurd. And I didn't include it in my suggested questions to you because it just popped into my head. So you've told us, what your olive oil tastes like. And I think that's really important, that it tastes like something that has come out of the garden. But I want to give people just some pointers, just what they should do at home with their olive oil. And I will say that for people who want to try your olive oil, if they, we only have one winner for the giveaway, but people can go to your website. It's corto.com, and I'll put links in the show notes, and they can order it on Amazon, some online retailers. But it's cool, and I think people should give it a try. So, and I also have here a 50 milliliter or 17 ounce bottle. Ooh, right there. I'll hold it up for people, and we can put some pictures in the show notes. So when people are buying olive oil, they're out at the store. What's the difference between olive oil and extra virgin olive oil? Just give us the quick scoop on that.
So olive oil, just olive oil, is a refined oil product. It can be lumped into the, edible oil category. Extra virgin olive oil means it isn't refined. So that means that it's naturally the juice of the olive itself. Now, I will take this opportunity to say that I believe the extra virgin standard is like getting a D in school, right? Just because it says extra virgin. Even if, let's assume for a moment, UC Davis did a study 10 years ago, and they found that 70% of oils that say extra virgin on them on the shelf are not even extra virgin. So even if it does say extra virgin on it, and let's assume it did pass the extra virgin standard, it's still like getting a D in school. And the reason I say that is because the definition of extra virgin really says it has no defects. That's it. There's nothing wrong with it. Imagine going to like your supermarket and asking for a piece of fish that has nothing wrong with it, right? It's the exact opposite way that we should be talking about olive oil. We should be talking about all the things that are right with olive oil. But the industry and the way we've learned it just isn't set up that way. We just haven't been taught that yet.
So what do we look for then when we're shopping? Because let's say I go into the grocery store, I need olive oil. What should I, the consumer, look for on the label to kind of get me as close as possible to the real deal, to the best product out there?
Sure. I mean, I can honestly say that it's very difficult, but the things I would look for something local. If you happen to be in an area where there are olives, or at least, if you're in the United States, California, because in California, we have the tightest legal standard for extra virgin in the world. So that's a good place to start. I would look for it's got to be a company you trust. So go to their website and try and learn what you can about them. Where are their orchards? Who made the oil, right? Who's the master miller? Who's the person that made the oil? Who's the team behind it? Make sure it's in dark glass, or even better, bag and box, or, stainless steel, because, even dark glass lets light through. look for a harvest date. So olive oil is juice. So you want it to be as fresh as possible. So, I mean, and then, like I said, the best tool a consumer will ever have is tasting. Learn what fresh olive oil tastes like. And then you can be the judge of your oils,
So in my home, my kids, I'm an empty nester, but when they're home, the one thing they cook is like, they'll make grilled cheese, they'll make cheese omelets, things like that, simple stuff. And my son Simon goes through a lot of olive oil, and I'm happy he does. But when he puts the lid back on, he never screws it tight. And that makes me crazy, because not only is maybe that olive oil it's certainly not a bag in a box traditionally, till Corto sent me their product. And sometimes it hangs out near the stove, but now air is getting in. So that's a bad thing, isn't it?
It is. I mean,
I should yell at him.
Well, the reality is, once you open it once, air is getting in, right? And it doesn't really matter if you leave it loose or you open it and then tighten it up. That's the beauty, in my opinion, of bag and box. And this is why, people often ask me what my job as a master miller is. And I say, well, it's a lot like a winemaker. But people tend to think that our jobs stop the moment we make the product. But that's not really true. My job at the end of the day is to make sure that all of my customers get fresh oil, right? And the only way I'm confident we can do that is with an advanced package that preserves freshness, like what we call flavor lock or bag and box. And the reason is pretty simple. The box protects from light. There's zero light getting inside. It also acts as an insulator, so it'll help shield the oil from temperature swings. And then the bag itself, it protects the oil from oxygen, and not just until you open it. It protects it from oxygen the entire time you use it. So if you have a 3 liter, for example, that's a lot of oil, right? But it'll stay fresh in a bag and box. Whereas when you open a bottle, oxygen starts getting in the moment you open it.
So I have this bag and box here, and explain to people. So it's like a plastic bag that's inside a box, cardboard, and there's a spigot. So explain that little spigot technology to people.
Yeah, I mean, it's the technology. Honestly, it came from the wine industry, right? We all know bag and box wines, and unfortunately,
like wine in a box. Wine in a box.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, wine started off by putting really cheap wine in them, right? And so we all have this bad connotation of bag and box. But the reality is, and this is why better and better wines are going in bag and box now, it's actually the best way to preserve fresh products, right? Whether it's wine or olive oil. And the spout, basically, as you let the oil out, it doesn't let oxygen in, and the bag collapses as you're dispensing the oil. So the bag doesn't allow oxygen to ever come in contact with the oil.
Yeah, it's super cool. So what I'll do is I'll remove olive oil through that spigot and put it like in a pitcher. And then I'll just use that, as I'm cooking. Just makes it a little bit easier. So can you bust a myth for us about olive oil?
Sure.
Because everybody always says, oh yeah, you're like, yeah, I'll bust a few myths. So we always hear that you should never saute, or go high heat with extra virgin olive oil. You should only use it for salad dressings or for dipping your bread. But you said that's a myth.
Absolutely. This is one of my favorite ones to talk about. So I'll dive into this one. So let's start at the beginning with the fruit again, right? We have our perfect orange, and then we have our overripe orange. We have our perfect olive, and we have our overripe olives. And let's start talking about smoke point, because that's generally people automatically go, olive oil has a low smoke point, I can't cook with it. Smoke point is directly correlated to the quality of the fruit. So if you harvest it at the right time, it will have a high smoke point. If the fruit is deteriorated when the juice is made, when the oil is extracted, it's going to have a lower smoke point. We said that 70% of the oil in the United States is from overripe fruit. And it's even worse in food service. If you think it's bad on the shelf, in restaurants, it's even worse. Because of that, most of the research done on olive oil, right, has been this commodity overripe fruit olive oil. So olive oil got this really bad reputation as having a low smoke point. But the reality is, once you open the gates of fresh fruit, fresh oil, then those olive oils have smoke points up 390, 405, 410, right? And so they're perfectly suited for cooking. In fact, if you give me another minute, I'd like to go another step further.
You can get one more minute. Go.
Smoke point is only half of the problem, right? The other part of the problem is a lot of the oils, a lot of the refined oils or the edible oils that have high smoke points are extremely unstable. So when you do actually bring them up in temperature, they break down really fast. Now, olive oil, because it's essentially fresh pressed juice, it retains all of the natural antioxidants that are in the fruit, right? So olive oil is loaded with polyphenols and different compounds that have a high antioxidant impact. Well, antioxidants are antioxidants, right? So as you're heating an olive oil, the antioxidants actually protect the oil chemically from falling apart. So at the end of the day, what olive oil is for cooking is fresh, high quality olive oil is for cooking, is an oil that has a high smoke point and is extremely stable because it is loaded with antioxidants.
Okay, so you mentioned antioxidants, and thank you for busting that myth. So is olive oil nutritious? I mean, we know it's high in calories like any fat, so you're not drinking a cup of it. You're using it sparingly and you're savoring it and loving it. But talk nutrition.
Okay, well, you know better than I. I am not a registered dietitian.
I know you are not.
I'm a master miller, but what I will say is that two things. Number one, there is more written about olive oil than I'd say it's either the number one or close to it, number one food item that's been studied for nutritional health in medical journals. And so there's just this massive body of evidence around health and olive oil. But what really excites me, and this is the second point, what really excites me about olive oil and particularly nutrition is that the medical community has shifted their thinking. They've realized that olive oil is different than the edible oil category, right? They're ahead of us in this. And so what most of the research of the last 10 to 15 years has been around has been to all of those healthy compounds in olive oil, like oleocanthal, aleuropane, hydroxytyrosol, all of these healthy compounds that are unique to olives that are being shown to have a significant impact on brain health, cardiovascular health. They're powerful antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. So I think really we call them the minor components. It's the stuff that's in olive oil that's not in other oils that makes it so exciting.
Yeah, when I think of the MIND diet, which is the Mediterranean Dash intervention for neurodegenerative delay, and there's 9 foods in the MIND diet that you should strive to eat every day, and olive oil is one of them. So hooray for olive oil. It's good for brain health.
And we should be really clear that it's not just olive oil. It's not just any olive oil. You have to make sure that it's fresh, high quality olive oil, because that's what has all of those good compounds in it.
Totally agree. So, I have your oils. I'm super lucky. And you can't just go into the grocery store and find your products. And I've never seen, and maybe it's there, but I haven't seen a bag in a box. I mean, do you think down the road, A, you'll start selling retail? And because I know you sell to chefs, or B, will other companies start embracing this bag in a box technology?
So I will answer that this way. So you can get home chefs can get our products. They're on the internet. We actually sell them on Amazon. You just want to make sure you're getting it from us, because we actually package just in time. So it goes straight from our cellars, right? From the casks you see behind me. It goes straight out of those, straight to your kitchen. I hope so. I hope people, it's going to have to come from the consumer probably. People have to start demanding fresh oil. And once they start demanding fresh oil and understanding what it is, then they're going to start demanding, all of us are going to say, well, wow, the only way I can get that there is in bag and box, right? And so, retail is hard. The reality is it's really hard to keep oil fresh. And, it's easy to do here. I have perfectly controlled cellars behind me, but once it hits the real world, it's a different proposition. It goes through distribution. It sits on the supermarket shelf under light. And, as hopefully our mission is to make sure that our customers get fresh oil. And as more companies adopt a similar mission, then yeah, absolutely. We're going to see packaging changes.
Good. Yeah, we do. I agree. Start calling your local grocery store, people. I always say it pays to complain. It pays to complain. So let's talk about adding olive oil to our everyday cooking then. I have a favorite salad dressing that I make, ever since COVID. I used to buy my salad dressings. I don't know why for years. And for whatever reason, I just started making dressings from scratch. And I am like, why on earth did I ever buy salad dressing? Because it's so delish when you make it yourself, especially with good quality olive oil. But tell me, what's your favorite salad dressing? What goes in it? And then I'll tell everybody what's in mine.
Well, if everyone's waiting for this great recipe right now, you're going to be disappointed, because I will tell you that one of the amazing things about olive oil is that, let's take California alone. There are over 75 different varieties of olives grown, right, for oil. And all of those varieties taste wildly different, from, Ascalano, which tastes like cantaloupe. And I'm not talking like stick your nose in there and you get a nuance of cantaloupe. I mean, it smells like somebody is cutting a cantaloupe in the room, all the way to like piqual, which is like a tomato leaf that you broke in half, or arbequina, that's like a fresh cut grass, to koroniki, that's like bananas, right? So there's this huge array of olive oil flavors. So what do? I pair my olive oils with my foods. So I will just put a wonderful, like if I'm having arugula, I'll put a really nice, robust oil, like a piqual, over my arugula with a little bit of salt and then maybe a little bit of citrus. So I tend to keep it super simple and let olive oil do its thing.
That's so cool that you're like pairing them, right? So for me, I'll do olive oil and I'll just put it in like a little mason jar. And then I squeeze in some lemon juice. So it might be, let's say, I don't know, 4 tablespoons olive oil to 2 tablespoons lemon juice. And then I add a drizzle of another acid. So it might be a little champagne vinegar, or you could do balsamic, which is kind of cool. And that changes the color, obviously. And then I add some Dijon mustard. That's the emulsifier, kind of helps to emulsify or combine the acid and the oil. I add a drizzle of honey, and I'm completely hooked on this local honey. I'm on Nantucket, and the honey just tastes like wildflowers. It's local. And oh my gosh, I just love it so much. So I add a little honey. I add either a little chopped up shallot or a little garlic, minced garlic, and then some kosher salt, a little bit of pepper. And then I just put the lid on and I shake it. And my friend Jim, who used to work at Chez Panisse as a chef in California, he, that's kind of his go-to. He does the balsamic. I tend to use the lemon juice and like a champagne vinegar, but it's so easy. And then I just store it in the fridge. And before we're going to have a salad, I pull it out and let it come to room temperature and give it a shake and then just pop it back in. But it's just, to me, it tastes so good. It's just simple. It's just so simple.
Yeah. I eat the same way, simple, fresh ingredients, and let them do all of the talking. And olive oil should be part of that world, right? Going back to farm to table, forgot about olive oil. That's exactly where it should be, is in these beautiful, fresh vinaigrettes, and yum.
What else? What else do you do with olive oil? I think you told me you drizzle it on ice cream. So please tell me more.
I have so many things I do with olive oil. So when you have fresh olive oil, maybe it's an ice cream challenge, but take vanilla or chocolate, whatever your favorite ice cream is, drizzle fresh, high quality olive oil over the top of it and sprinkle it with sea salt. And what you'll find is that the fruitiness, in particular, the fruitiness of the olive oil comes out. And it makes this incredibly fruity, beautiful dessert.
Ooh, give me another weird idea, because I'm totally going to try that.
Okay, another one. I really like desserts, so I'm going to start desserts. But take dark chocolate truffles, really dark chocolate truffles, and dip them in a really robust, fresh olive oil. And what you'll find is that there's the antioxidants in olive oil. They have a nice warming sensation on the throat. And the fruitiness of the olive oil and that warming sensation make an incredible, like, spicy chocolate sensation. I also pour it on my popcorn. I think popcorn with olive oil and sea salt is amazing. Oh man, I use it in every. Oh, I have one more fun one. If you want a game changer, start making your own mayonnaise, but make it with a high quality olive oil. And let the olive oil flavor come through. Let it do its thing. And it makes food better.
That sounds so good. So I made a gazpacho. Now, I've never been one for a cold soup, but I've been very much into Ina Garten's recipe lately. So this is an Ina recipe, but I kind of adapt it and tweak it as I do with all my recipes. But basically, you just I have a little mini blender that I use for like little smoothies and whatnot. But you take cucumber and you just give it a quick pour in the blender. So you don't puree it, but it's like chunky. So that just, you got your cucumber. You do that with bell pepper, tomato, red onion. And then I just throw all that like in a pitcher. And then I add some, red wine vinegar, and then olive oil and garlic. And then I just chop up a bunch of herbs. This is what she doesn't do, but I need to do this. So I chop up parsley, whatever I have, parsley, cilantro, mint, basil. That's what I did with this one. And then I had fresh corn on the cob and I cooked it and I had a leftover cob. So I shucked it and I added the corn kernels. And then you could just serve that cold soup. I just let it sit in the fridge overnight. Serve that cold soup and then add some cilantro leaves, some more corn, and then a drizzle of the olive oil on top, maybe a little salt.
Wow. Well, I think I mentioned this to you earlier, but my mom is Basque and I grew up with Gazpacho. So that really takes me home.
Now, what would you put in a Gazpacho?
Same kind of similar, thing? Fresh herbs, tomatoes. But for me, the key has always been to drizzle the olive oil over the top. Right. And you can do that with any soups or stews or anything and just put it over the top and you get this beautiful aromatic experience as well. So
I am going to have that gazpacho for lunch. I'm going to take a picture of it. And I promise I will put this into the show notes. So for people who have kids or grandkids at home, and, we're always like, okay, cook with your kids and have your kids do a taste test of, peaches or different apples, or, just get them engaged to eat more fruits and vegetables. That's something we talk about a lot on the podcast. And as dietitians, we talk about it. But how could you get your kids sort of excited about olive oil? I mean, you mentioned the ice cream idea, which is kind of cool, but what might you do to teach your kids about olive oil?
So there are and maybe we can put this in the show notes too. There are a couple of children's books about olive oil and the story of an olive. One of them is called Coratina, and they're super fun. They're a great way to get people, children engaged with the ingredient early on. And then for the scientists, there are some neat things you can do. Like if you take a green laser and you shine it through a high quality olive oil, the light will turn red in the olive oil. So that's a fun sciencey one. But I think the big one for me is be creative in how you use olive oil. Because once you stop thinking about it as an edible oil and you start thinking about it as an ingredient, as a topping, as something different, you start putting it on ice cream, you start putting it on popcorn, you start drizzling it over things you never thought, summer drinks, lemonade, right? Or, peaches with mint and then put olive oil over it, right? Keep it super simple. But I think it's the more engaged we can get the next generations that are coming up with fresh, high quality olive oil. I think that the versatility of the ingredient is really going to be the star. People are really going to start to wrap their heads around how incredibly useful olive oil really is and what a delight it is in so many ways.
And even if you're making grilled cheese or omelets, because I mentioned that earlier, you don't have to use butter or one of those edible oils. You can just use olive oil, and then it adds, obviously that fat prevents the omelet from sticking to the pan, but it adds that other element of flavor and nutrition to that eggy omelet.
Yeah. And, another thing, there's a lot of research now that shows that when vegetables are cooked in olive oil, the polyphenols from the vegetables transfer to the olive oil and the polyphenols from the olive oil transfer to the vegetables. So and they're a lot more bioavailable. So you end up actually getting more of those really healthy compounds when you cook in a high quality olive oil.
Yeah. And that's something I talk about. Like if you're going to have a salad, don't have a fat-free salad. Always add some kind of fat to your vegetables because, as David just said, it unleashes a lot of the nutrients. And so if you have a salad with some olive oil or a salad dressing drizzled on it, you'll get more vitamins, the fat-soluble vitamins, because fat-soluble, that fat will carry it through your body. And then also certain antioxidants like the carotenoids. So you're going to get more of those when you combine it. So let's say you're making shakshuka. I have a recipe on my blog for you take hummus and you kind of smear it in a bowl or on a platter. And then you make shakshuka, which is like I cook bell peppers and canned tomatoes. I'll use like petite diced tomatoes and olive oils in there and garlic and onion. And so this yummy tomato mixture, and then you can add egg on top of it. You can add an egg on top of it, shakshuka. This is something they eat in Israel, from what I've heard, like every day kind of thing. They have shakshuka restaurants. But the lycopene, which is this cancer protective antioxidant in cooked tomatoes, that lycopene, your body will be able to utilize it more efficiently if you have that olive oil that you're pairing with it. So very important that we include those good quality oils. Well, this has been such a fascinating discussion. I feel like I could talk all day, and I feel like I'm spoiled because I'm surrounded by, all of these great Corto olive oils that will last me a long time because I'm going to keep them away from the heat and the oxygen in the light. So anything else, David, you want to say about Corto or about olive oil that we haven't touched on? And then where can people find you online and on social media?
Sure. I mean, I think my take-home messages would be rethink the way we think about olive oil. Start thinking about it in terms of a fresh pressed juice, right? And then when we do that, understand that it takes a lot of energy to get fresh pressed juice, right? All fresh, high quality olive oil to the customer. And when you're looking for companies or you're looking for brands, then find the ones that care about that are putting time and energy into that, because that's really the only way you're going to get that high quality olive oil that we're really after, the one we've been talking about all day that's going to change the way we eat, right? And that, that for us, that's our mission. Like we live, breathe it. We're constantly innovating and trying to find better ways to do that. All of our oils are available online. So if you go to our website or on Amazon, you can get the oil there. It's corto-olive.com. And the other one would be taste your oil. Taste it. Because I can't tell you how wonderful olive oil can be. It makes food better. But I also can tell you about how terrible olive oil can make food. If you use a bad olive oil in your ice cream, right? Or if you use a bad olive oil in a baked good or in a white bean puree, it's going to taste like bad olive oil. So learn it fresh from the garden, just, taste it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. And you're on social media at Corto?
Yes. Instagram, Facebook. You're talking to the wrong guy for social media, but yes, Instagram, Facebook at Corto Olive.
We will put that in the show notes. Well, I'm so thankful you came on the show today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've had a great time.
And to all of my listeners, as always, if you love the show, tell a friend about it, post a review on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, wherever you get your podcasts. Head on over to the show notes, liz'shealthytable.com/podcast, episode 104. My U.S. listeners, please enter the giveaway. You do not want to not have this olive oil in your pantry. And as always, thanks for listening to Liz's Healthy Table.